he changed my trajectory. Regardless of what my uncle did for me in basketball in middle school, what my dad did for me when I was in high school, priceless. I'll never forget that because it made me become so disciplined. And as I progress in my life, like it also made me intentional. You know, disciplined and being intentional, it says a lot.
Welcome to Guys That Listen. I'm Peter, and today we got special guest Jeff on the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, dude. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, my name is Jeffrey Dang. I was born and raised in Westminster, California. Just been here ever since in OC and just exploring, you know, my solitude, my relationships, and just a lifelong learner, you know, after school. And I'm a creative. I love music. So I started DJing back in 2018. Just spent a whole year like in the bedroom. And I remember I was part of a fraternity back in college days. I went to Cal State Long Beach, and one of my fraternity sisters, she was like, "Hey, why don't you just reach out to Peter from Feel Good?" And I'm just like, you know what? I think I'm ready. And then I remember like messaging you on Facebook one day, and then you're like, "Yo, come through the studio." And here we are. It's been how many years?
I know, it's 6 years. It's been a long time,
insane.
man. It's a long journey.
Long journey with you and everyone else in our crew, and you guys are family to me. So I've been just navigating my creative realm as a DJ, music producer, and just working full time, you know, trying to manage both and my relationships with my friends, family, and loved ones.
Yeah, you're a busy guy, but you're very on top of things. You know, for the way I see it is that the version of you back then to now is different for sure. But you've always had something in you, from what I've noticed, that you know how to pick and choose what aligns with you. And I don't know if was it always like that with you, or is that something you picked up in your adulthood or, you know, later years?
I appreciate that question. I had to do a lot of soul searching, and up to this day, I'm always soul searching, you know. And how do I soul search is being alone, being in solitude, and really figuring out my life. Like, is this where I want to be? What do I enjoy? What have I learned from, like, in terms of my mistakes? Because I'm not perfect. And how do I overcome these obstacles that and face these trials and tribulations that I have?
Was there something that suddenly sparked that change, or is that something you've always done as you were growing up, constantly asking yourself that question, where you want to be and what do you need to change?
Yeah, just experiencing like the structures of school, friendships that come and go, like back in elementary, middle school to high school. College is the same thing. It's like you're dealing with all these people, like new people that you want to be a part of your life, but turns out they're temporary. And the only person that I have to rely on is myself. So whether it's like my love life, like my friendships, I think I've, up to this present day, is like I've learned to accept that. And even as much as I want to play long-term games with everyone, there's only a certain amount of people that can be in my circle, you know. And other people are just noise, could be just acquaintances, but I'm rooting for everyone to win.
That's very well thought out, because I feel like we have almost opposite upbringings in that case, right? Because for me, it was almost as if I wanted everything my way growing up, right? I had an idea of who were going to be my friends, who I was going to spend most of my time with, what kind of career I wanted, where I wanted to be with my finances, and all these things. And what's funny is, as I've grown up and come to understand that, things didn't pan out the way I thought it would, you know. Now I have to reassess and see where I want to go with things and how I can navigate through life, accepting the fact that it's not how I want it to be. And is it even what I really want it to be? So hearing that you were so malleable for so long, which is awesome, you know, it must be something that your parents taught you, your upbringing. I mean, I'm sure school teaches you that to a certain degree, but I felt like school was so structured in a way that it forced me to just be a certain way, right? It's like, what career do you want to be when you grow up? Oh shit, so does that mean I have to stick with that idea that I had when I was 8 years old all the way, you know, till when do I give them that idea? Why did I have to even decide? And am I even the same person anymore? You know, and It's funny because I'm glad you said that, you're not perfect. And I know that we don't have to really preface that idea because no one is perfect. But the idea of where we are, we've gone really far, and that's why I said, like, knowing you've always had that built into you for a while, at least the 6 years that I've known you, and probably prior to that. But everyone at one point is just figuring shit out. Right. And I think the more people understand that, and the more people allow yourself like forgiveness for the things that you might have done when you were younger that might not have been the best to you or the people that you love or society even, like, I think the more we could actually progress with life, because I had to allow myself that. Like, I had to forgive myself for being so stubborn in my ways. I would tell people, especially friends who meet me later in life and people on the podcast, I for lack of a better word, I used to not be this chill. Right? Like, I used to be very, very uptight in my ways, and I would think, if you did this, you're a bad person. You did this, you're a good person. And that's the only way I saw things, because I wanted to be right. And then only until later did I realize that the thing that really hurt me the most from like denying all the way life panned out was actually just really hurting my ego. Right? For whatever reason, I really want to be right. And only until I let go of the idea of being right did I do what's right for me. And it's funny how life has moments and events that humble you.
Yeah, I agree. And the way you mentioned ego, it's just like we have to face it each and every day. It's like, why are we so uptight about a certain thing? And like, what makes us want to be right all the time? And how can we see the other side, as in like the other party? Like, let's just say you're having like disagreements or opposing viewpoints. It's just like, how do you understand them? How do you make them feel heard and being tuned into their realm? Because what if they're right in their own sense and you're right as well? But it's just like, but we're fighting. So it's just like, how the heck can we resolve this?
Yeah, when egos clash, it's hard, man. Like, being kids, that was like the biggest thing. You would clash with your friends just to clash. There's no good reason for it, right? And I've come to understand one thing, that everything that we feel, everything that exists within us for a reason. So ego, even though it typically has a negative connotation to it, there's a reason for it, right? And what I've also come to understand is those things are built into us, like biologically, and they might not be put into the same use as it was originally. And what I believe ego did before was that ego helped you survive, right? If we go back in time and we had to make this decision between whether we should approach this animal or stay in this cave during winter months, right, is going to be life or death for us. We have to have somewhat of an ego to truthfully believe like this is the right choice, right? And nowadays it probably doesn't serve us nearly as much, or at least we don't use it to how it can serve us, right? And you want to be right because back then being wrong meant that you might not see the next day. Right? And that's what I've kind of like really go back to a lot. Is my thought process is, what was this for? And do we still need it to do what it used to do? Right? And now if it doesn't serve us in the way that it used to serve us, like, how can we use it in a different way that it does? How can we modify it to serve us now?
Back then was like all about survival and adapting, and now it's just like we're comfortable because we have all these advances. Like, we're living in this era where like the technological, like the digital age is like always evolving. We just talked about this before the podcast, and it's just like you've been doing this podcast, and it's like a digital realm, like a time capsule, of what we're going through.
Right now. And technology is getting so advanced that we can't even catch up with it, right? In the way that we think. Like, imagine back then, if you were wrong about something, it might have been easier for you to get away. But being this podcast is online and the internet is forever, I might be wrong about so many things moving forward, right? Which is another reason why I like to speak very anecdotally, because I know what my truth is for the most part, or at least I can discern between what I believe is my truth at the time, right? I can't tell you if this has happened to someone else or should not. I don't know. But I can tell you what has happened to me and the way I think and what I've processed now, and I'm still also allowed to change my mind. But I think what the way we're set up is like you're almost condemned for changing your mind, you know, and you're almost praised for sticking your ideals all the way through. Right? Great example is, you know, dating, for example. If someone is married to the first boyfriend or girlfriend, significant other that they've ever had, we praise them, right? Oh, dude, how'd you guys do? You guys did such a good job. You guys found each other right away. You know, there's something special about you guys, right? You guys are rare. And then on the opposite end, some guy's been divorced 7 times. You're like, damn, you fucking up. Like, like what is wrong with you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I understand why, right? I understand why, because it almost, in some way or another, kind of tells you about their life and their choices, right? Not to say that's, you know, accurate, because there's a lot more nuance to everyone's relationships than what you see. Right. And it's so easy to portray yourself a certain way. And I think we're so scared of being wrong in that sense because it's almost like a mark against us. Right. And I know that we've become more open-minded thinkers since then. You know, I've spoken to a friend of mine recently, and he was telling me about, you know, how he's going through a divorce and how things are changing for him. And he's come to understand, like, yes, we did have vows and we did make a decision to, you know, be together for forever, for eternity. But also at the same time, what is the circumstances in which we were choosing that, right? Are we choosing that under the circumstance that we'll be happy together forever or unhappy together forever? Right. And that's a choice that you have to make. And thankfully, we've come to understand that people make mistakes.
Yes.
Going back to what we're saying, like, we're flawed, right? Like, we're allowed to make mistakes, especially if you learn from them. Especially if you learn from them. We hope that people do, but I know that's not always the case. So in your lifetime, right, all the things that you've done, was there like a turning point for you that specifically made you think, hey, it's good to revisit me in current day time, right? Like, what am I about now?
I get it. I guess to answer your question, I think with every choice we make, there's always a risk. Whether if it's like, okay, I'm choosing this job, a 9 to 5 over full-time like business owner, right? There's some caveat and learning lessons that I'm going to be taking from my 9 to 5, because maybe it might not be like I'm going to plan to retire and work for this company for the rest of my life. I don't think it's working this way anymore. It used to be, but I've noticed this trend where people that work in the corporate life, they leave every few years for more opportunity, more pay, or just essentially just quit and figure their life out and mold their own path. And I think at this point in my life, like in terms of work, like I become jaded in a sense where I just experienced like massive layoffs like this past week, and to seeing like senior members that have been devoted to this company for so long getting laid off, and just with like a few months of severance package, like it's nothing. It's like, how are they gonna fend for themselves now? How are they gonna survive? They have families to take care of. They have they have bills to pay. So it's just like for that layoff to happen all so sudden, it's just like I cannot, like the choice I made now, it may have been right a few years ago, but maybe it's now time to pivot and really assess my current situation. And all these signs are like really making me like, okay, let me reconnect to myself, be in solitude, journal out all of my thoughts, figure out all of my current skill sets, and mold myself into like, okay, can I become a business owner? Can I work with my crew, the Feel Good Collective, and just really expedite our group as a whole? Can I just start like an LLC, which I already created like last year, you know? I'm still debating on what to do with it, but I think it's time to really propel that.
You know, you mentioned journaling. I know you journal because I've seen you journal. Even in the middle of us having dinner, you'll pull out the journal to do it. And one of the things I noticed about you is you're very studious, right? In life, in music, in your career, you're just a studious person. You're constantly always learning, right? What fuels that for you?
Man, I gotta thank my mom. I grew up with her, and she's been a stay-at-home mom for the past 30 years, bro. My dad was the breadwinner, the sole breadwinner, whose income is minimum wage. So we grew up like low income, you know, government assistance. And for my mom to just really sacrifice her career Like, we're going back to the topic of every choice we make, there's a risk, reward, and for her to just risk it all for 5 of her kids to develop them and nurture them up till now and still to this present day. And I'm thankful that my parents are still alive to this day, and I try to savor every moment with them. I literally just came from my parents' house where my dad just gave me a fresh cut, and I checked in with the both of them, see how they're doing.
Good job.
Yeah, no, he's certified cosmetologist, so he does
nice.
that on the side, but it's just for family. But I think now that I have more time with them, I might just freaking pop up my dad and like do like some reels or something, and then get some customers for him, like a loyal fan base.
Yeah, that'd be kinda
dope. What's it called? Back to my mom. She was the one that would lay next to me during bedtime and read me a book.
Oh wow.
So back to our question of, I'm a lifelong learner. It's because of her. She taught me how to read, bro. It's crazy because I don't know, man. I love them to death, and we're being first gen Vietnamese. My parents flew here. They had a. I'm grateful that they were able to fly versus being fresh off the boat. It's Vietnam War and all that, and being first gen immigrant. For her to just do all this for me and my siblings, it means so much to me. So it's just like I'm always kind of like reconnecting with that. And like this past year was when I was really able to fully immerse myself into my culture. Had a whole family trip in Vietnam back in May, and I spent a whole month with them. Studied my roots, the food culture, music culture, coffee culture. I just absorb, bro, and I just love to learn and experience all of these things, and I always try to apply it, through my mom, through my dad's like sacrifice, even though he was just minimum wage worker, but for him to know the ins and outs of, okay, how do I secure this job, but also figure out the housing, like it takes so much time. My mom doesn't know jack shit except for nurturing and taking care of the household. My dad's more like the brains, in a sense where, okay, I know how to deal with paperwork and I know how to work. And growing up, I didn't really grow up like with my dad because he was working nonstop. So, growing up as a kid, being a teenager, all that, like all of the sports that I was a part of, football, basketball, I always looked at all the other kids and it made me envious because their parents were there. And it made me like really angry. I was hecka angry, bro. Like, why is my dad not here? It made me like really hate him. It made me really despise my parents. And I grew up with an older sister back in the day. Grew up in Westminster, the hood, Ziegler Park, Bellaterra, all the gang banging. My sister was like a wannabe ABG, but at the same time, she was fucking book smart. 4.0 was everything, and just tried hard. I don't know if you remember, like back in the Tumblr days, there used to be posts about like all the ABGs and the drama llama.
Yeah.
She was a part of all that, and they would post her. There's so many haters, bro. So for her to just be a studious person as well, I followed my sister's footsteps into, okay, like how can I be studious but also have fun?
Yeah.
But not the party type, which my sister was and still is. I was more of, okay, what are my hobbies? And what do I like to do? Wholesome activities, right? Yeah. It was basketball and studying nonstop. But also I grew up with gaming. PS2 was my era. Dance Dance Revolution.
Damn.
I would have the whole dance pad, but at the same time I figured out, okay, I can just get all the points by just using the controller.
It's easy. The shortcut.
So I think that's where my love for music also started, was through Dance Dance Revolution, and also like my sister's like CD albums. Just I guess lifelong learner through my mom, but also through my older sister. They both played a huge role in my life in how the hell can I keep up with all of this entertainment, but also limit my distractions for me to become better. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So they both inspire me. My sister was more of my protector, and I was like more of the feminine, scaredy cat, shy boy
I
type.
mean, if you got an ABG sister, it definitely could be the protector for sure.
Yeah. Oh man. I gotta tell you a story. Back when I was living in an apartment back in Westminster, it was called Chestnut Village, and then I would walk out after school to go to the park, like right across the street. There would be like a whole group of people, like they were smoking, they were tatted up, and then a girl came up to me, and she was like, "Hey, yo, where's your sister at? I'm gonna fuck her up." She said that to me, and I'm just like, in my head, "Oh, my sister's in the house," but I don't know what to tell her. I'm like, I'm just gonna go play basketball, and I just walked away.
Wow.
So there was just instances, where like people just want to jump her.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean those times are very different. It's definitely interesting how far we've come. I can't really exactly say what the youth is going through now, but
Yeah.
definitely it felt a lot more active back then.
Yeah.
I think people just talked more. I
Yeah.
mean in like person, not like online. You know what I mean? My first instance of that was in high school too. Funny enough, it had nothing to do with my siblings, but had something to do with a friend of mine at the time. And one of the guys, ninth grade, first day in class, and this guy's like, "Hey, X, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I don't fuck him up. Oh, really? Why? He's trying to talk to my girl. I'm like, oh shit, really? Like, I didn't even know he was fucking talking to anyone. This is fucking ninth grade freshman in high school, and obviously I could tell that he was just more of he just grew up around gangsters, and that's his approach. Funny enough, I ended up becoming friends with him, and I think that was one of the things I was always good at, was becoming friends with people who just wasn't the friendliest people sometimes. And I've also come to understand that people end up like that for a reason. There's whether they're most of the time it's their circumstance, right? Their upbringing, the people they're around. So now being at the age in my mid 30s now, late 30s, I don't really get upset at people like that anymore. I'm just like, oh damn, it's unfortunate that you have to go through those things, and that's what I think about it. But yeah, I kind of want to go back to something that you brought up, and how your dad wasn't around because he just worked so much, and to a certain degree you felt resentful, and maybe some anger. Like, I kind of want to go into that because I think that is very common amongst immigrant families, especially lower income families. Like, you got to work, you got to provide. And I think what it is that, when you're a kid, you understand the nuance to that, right? Like, why do you have to work? We live fine. Like, why do they have to sacrifice? And what does that mean? Does that mean they don't love me, don't care about me enough? And I hear that time and time again, and I think that was the reality of things back then, right? But how do you unpack that? And how did you feel back then, and how do you feel now?
Great question. Currently, I love my family to death. They're so precious to me. How my dad shows love is by giving me haircuts. Sometimes I betray him, and he's like, "What the fuck kind of haircut is that?"
You went to another barber, didn't you?
Yeah, I would go to a different barber, and I would show up and be like, "What the fuck is wrong with your hair?" Like, he would just roast the shit out of it.
Damn.
So like, I'll be like, "Yeah, it's fine. Like, I know you're busy and you're just doing your thing. I don't want to bother you, But at the same time, I know that he wants me to bother him because he wants to cut my hair. So I always try to make time for that. And sometimes we don't talk about jack shit. And I'm just mindful, quiet, and just being there for him and just letting him do his thing. But there are moments when we do talk, like just small talk, But what changed me as a person recently was during my Vietnam trip. I laid out all of the problems that my family had, like all the beef that we had to go through, and just really trying to be accountable for myself, but also making sure that my little brother, who's the youngest, is accountable for his actions. So by me, like, okay, how do I navigate this realm, and how do I be a better brother to him, and just kind of put him on, like, okay, like the path that he's currently on is not the right path, and he's gonna regret like taking our family for granted, and all of our work. It's like, what are you doing? You're the youngest, and you just dropped out of high school. But he took his exit exam, so technically he passed. But he went to college, but then he dropped out of college. So I kind of assessed the situation in Vietnam, and I just really talked to him like man to man, like, hey, like, you have to take care of yourself, because what if our parents aren't going to be with us? What if your siblings aren't? Like, who the hell is going to take care of you, bro? So for me to have that talk, for me to be as vulnerable and firm, and like I like blew up during that trip. You know, I wasn't like talking like this.
Yeah.
I had to really let all of my frustrations and emotions out in front of my family, and I broke down, bro. And my dad, he, how Vietnamese show love is, have you eaten yet? My dad never showed me love in the sense where, like he gave me a hug, or like, you know, but he gave me a hug that day, and that moment, just, I've let go of my whole entire ego. Whatever I've had, whatever I had to deal with, whatever bullshit, whatever pain points that I've had, I felt it all disappear.
Oh, wow.
The moment he hugged me. And I've learned to let go of all the games that he missed in childhood. I've let it all go, you know? And
Wow, dude.
I've been hiding my tattoo from my parents from the past however long. And during that same trip, at the moment he hugged me, took off my shirt, I'm like, hey, this is what I have. This is who I am. And I hope that you guys accept me, because like I go through all this life shit, and my escapisms is developing my intellect, becoming a lifelong learner, being a productive member of society, connecting with music. And I think music feeds my soul. Everything that I do, it nurtures a part of my soul. So you have to think about it this way. Like, even our conversations, it nurtures a piece of me. You know, it's like I'm giving you a piece of my time in my brain. However the fuck we're manifesting it, we're like thinking about it, and we're just expressing ourselves, right? And I really appreciate you for having this platform. And we discussed earlier how there was a guy that approached you, and he was just thankful that you're been doing this podcast, and it changed his life in a healthy way, you know? So I really appreciate what you're doing. And I think as a creative, as like a person that wants to do a lot of things, I see what you're doing, and I'm really grateful for having this heart-to-heart moment with you.
Of course, dude. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for, dude. Yeah, I almost had deja vu, because I've been through a very similar situation with my dad. You know, I think a lot of Vietnamese families are like that, and you know, I kind of really opened up to my dad when we were younger.
Yeah.
And I still struggle with it sometimes now, you know, and I don't know if I've felt similarly, in the sense that he was not really there for me when I was younger. And I think also, maybe, I don't know, if you let me know if you had this in common also. I was very scared of my dad when I was younger.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I was, you know, when he was home, it was just always something crazy going on, something breaking, yelling, screaming, fighting. And I think this is the first time I ever talked about this.
Okay.
That made me, for sure I was scared, but that made me want him not to be around.
Wow.
You know? Like the nights that he would have long days at work, where he would come home past 1 a.m. after being out since like 6 a.m. I'm like, okay, cool, because now if I go to sleep, by the time I wake up, I'll go to school and I don't have to see him, you know? And I think that was something I just thought about right now. You know, I actually was looking forward to him not being home, you know, because I was always so fearful of him being around and what might happen, you know? And I don't know how much that's affected me as like an adult. I've definitely felt like I've made amends with him, more so because maybe for one, I'm bigger now. I'm bigger than he is. And, you know, the thing about old Asian parents is they shrink as they get older, you know, and right now we're at the age where, we get a little bit bigger. But yeah, you know, growing up with that, you know, in my early years, I do remember when he was a little bit more kind, you know, because you have a little more leeway before you hit your teens, and then your teens and your adult life. Yeah. That I did think that he was always gone too often, you know, and I think fortunately I had my mom around, and even then after a while she had to go and provide too, so they both had to work, and I found this weird relief when my parents left, because there was so much turmoil in the family. and I struggled with that for the longest time. And oh wow, it's weird. I'm like going through all this right now.
Yeah, no.
While I'm talking to you.
Take your time.
When I was younger, I was always the black sheep of the family. Like family events, I never went to. Family vacations, if I could not be there, family trips, never around.
Wow.
And I could not really understand why I was like that compared to my sister and my brother.
Yeah.
And I think it was because I was more conscious of what was going on with the family and how, my friend used this to describe the situation before, how my parents triangulated me. Right. And like, are you familiar with triangulation?
Could you elaborate?
Yeah. So, I'm not going to be the best at explaining this, but loosely, it's basically a relationship between three people and two of them, which is kind of like pitched against another person based off of another person's biases. So this happens a lot frequently with parents, right? Because let's say you have a kid and like they no longer have a real relationship. One parent can be like, oh yeah, like you hang out with your dad, but remember he's a bad person. So already you kind of instill this negative bias into the child, right? And then you go and then all of a sudden you feel a certain type of way about this person that you might not have, but that makes the whole relationship very toxic.
Wow.
Right. So that's what they call triangulation, or at least from what I know. And now, being older and understanding that, I'm like, oh, I feel like that happened a lot. And they did it to each other. My dad would be like, your mom is a bad person because she gambles away all her money. She steals. And, my mom would be like, oh, your dad's abusive or whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was just in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I just hated being around them, like together, and I hated being at family events, hated being on family trips because that meant I was stuck with them for X amount of time. And I would never feel comfortable, just always constantly in fear something would happen and I would be the scapegoat, or I would be the medium in which they would like communicate with each other. And they're not talking like how we talk, they're yelling, they're throwing things. It's crazy.
It makes me so I have a question for you. In that in your state of mind, like, did you have to choose sides, or were you just always in the middle of it?
I mean, I'm not quite sure between choosing sides. I don't think I really had a choice. I don't think it really mattered. An example I bring up is, I remember, I think I was like 8 years old, maybe 7, it doesn't matter, but around that age, my parents had gotten into an argument and my mom took us away and like brought us to a family friend's house, or family member's house. And we were there for like 2 days, I think 2 or 3 days before my dad found us and like pretty much dragged us back home.
Oh, wow.
And back then it was just all landlines, like no cell phones, a pager, that's the only way you reach. So if someone wanted to not talk to you, it was very easy. And if you want to find someone, it was very difficult. So eventually he found us and he dragged us back home. And, I don't think I got to say whose side I chose. I don't think I chose because my mom just pulled us out of the house.
Gotcha.
But at that point, according to my dad's perception, I had already chosen.
Oh.
Because I had left the home. I had left him. And, I remember, not knowing how to navigate the situation because it was weird. He was constantly always working, right? But at that time, I think he allowed his anger to fester and he changed the way he was functioning. Like he would choose to be home more often, but not in a way where it's like, I want to be around, I want to be present. It was in a way where it was like punishing to us. Like constantly yelling at us. Wow. Like now he's around to yell, right? What I feared had happened, right? Where before I would be so relieved to hear that he's gonna work like long nights.
Yeah.
Only to find out that now he's like home all the time and he's putting us in very awkward situations where it was like, oh, tell this lady that, and that lady was my mom, but he would not refer to her as wife or mother. It was like, this stranger, tell her this.
Wow.
And then I remember I would even address him like, Vietnamese dad is ba, right? Or bo. He'd be like, I'm not your ba or your bo. I'm your chu.
Jesus Christ.
Like, in Vietnamese language, like they usually refer to older male as chu, which is uncle, whether you're related or not, typically, right?
Yeah.
Just like sign of respect. And he was like, yeah, I'm not your dad. I'm your Jew. I'm an older male figure, you know. And I honestly don't know how I ever navigated out of that for a while.
Wow. Wow.
And yeah, so I don't think I got to choose a side. I don't think I think if I had to choose a side, if I had to think about how I felt and who aligned more with me, it was my mom, because I wasn't fearful of her. Right?
Yeah,
And I think
yeah.
fear is such a big emotion that you know, it's almost like when you're in a state of fear, you can't really process things well, because it's almost like you're thinking about survival, right? And that was like my mind at the time, like, how do I survive? And you know, that meant that I would go, you know, from everything from not being on family vacations, not being at home.
Yeah.
You know, that I think, I'm sure there's other variables to it, but I was rarely ever home. You know, I picked up skateboarding as soon as I could.
Oh, nice.
Well, before I could get a car, I was like, I skated out of the house.
Wow.
You know, I picked up friends who, you know, like as soon as 15 or 16, stayed out really late, you know, till the AM, so that I didn't have to be home.
Wow.
You know, I did everything basically in my power to not be around them.
Yeah.
You know, but I think I spoke about this a little bit, where I felt like in a way I betrayed my siblings as a older brother, because I'm the oldest in the family. You know, I kind of let them handle that in their own, and of course they're younger than me. They don't even know what's going on, really. You know, and I think in that way our relationship disintegrated too, because now that I think about it, because me and my brother used to be really close, and then during that time was when, you know, I say it in this way where it seems like everyone does it, where it's like, oh, you find your middle school friends and your high school friends, and then you become too cool for your sibling. Right?
Yeah.
I feel like that happens to a lot of people. But for me, it wasn't because I was too cool for my siblings. It's because I couldn't be home to be around that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't want to be home. I was scared.
yeah.
So I chose to be with my friends, because that alleviated me of having those responsibilities of dealing with my parents.
Wow.
And now, you know, now that I'm thinking about it too, you know, because my brother and my sister, their relationship became really strong during that time. And you know, it was like this weird shift, right? And now that I'm putting everything in like order and like seeing how it is, like I kind of get it.
Yeah, you mentioned being the black sheep, and you told me about how you were able to just escape your parents just to really find your way, and through friendship and skateboarding and all that. I guess in what circumstance, like how did you figure out, like, okay, when do I not become a black sheep anymore, and when did I realize that I have all of these responsibilities? Like, when did I make the time for my siblings again? You know, like, how did you navigate this realm?
Man, to be honest, probably just recently. I think just recently, maybe a couple of years ago, if that. And it had something to do with also, you know, family, where I saw my dad's health decline. I saw my grandma pass, some grandparents' health decline. And I was like, wow, it's really weird now that as this is happening and people are passing or on the cusp of passing, that I feel like I've missed out, you know. And prior, I didn't really feel that. I felt like I didn't miss out. I felt like I escaped. You know, I got away from something that was harmful for me and something that didn't serve me, right? And now I think the reason why I also have come to accept that maybe I have missed out on certain things with my family and in life is because I've come to accept who they are and why they are the way they are.
Yeah.
And how a lot of it is due to their circumstances and what they grew up with. And, you know, in the idea of how parents work with children and their child is that your child's supposed to surpass you. They're supposed to succeed you. You're supposed to be smarter, supposed to be better, stronger, healthier, live longer, right? And a certain part of me thought, hey, am I not that person? Did I not do that for my parents? Did I not live to that expectation? And if I believe that I know better, I've learned things that, they couldn't have learned. My parents both dropped out before high school.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe I could approach it in a way that they never could.
Mm.
I started talking to them more kindly, and again, this is just as of recent.
Wow.
Both of them,
Mm.
even in the face of anger now.
Mm.
Even when my dad is yelling or screaming, I speak to him in kindness.
Wow.
And not to say that I knew that was the right way to do it. It was just one of the few ways that I've not tried. And I think, we get to a point where you exhaust all your options and you're like, I don't know if this is right. I'm used to fighting fire with fire,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And I've seen him become kinder, and I've seen myself become less annoyed with my mom, and because that was like the opposite reactions, right? My mom was always, for whatever reason, I would feel annoyed by the things that she would bring upon me, and my dad, I was always fearful.
Wow.
Right? I would hide things.
Yeah.
I've come to accept like there are reasons why they are the way they are, and it's not their choice. And unfortunately, they didn't get to learn that growing up, but I do. So why am I not, for lack of a better word, the bigger person? And I think that's what it is. It's like I can't say this is 100% always the case, but it's almost always better to be the bigger person. Where it's like, okay, I can, get back at you. I can resent you.
Yeah.
But why? Like, maybe I could just love you.
Wow. That's powerful. I think for you to strip away all the resentment, your ego, and being able to reflect and be like, okay, wow, like I accept my parents for who they are, and I'm going to do my best just to be kind. How does that make you feel now? Like now that you're able to reconnect with them in that way?
I think it's freeing to a certain degree, because the reason why I say to a certain degree is because I don't think I've absolved all of that resentment. Right? Some of it is still there.
Yeah.
I talk about this a couple times where it's like my mom will call me and ask me how my day is and why am I automatically annoyed by such a nice gesture.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
But I'm also learning, hey, like if your mind is powerful enough, right? And I can understand that this is to a certain degree unreasonable, and probably there's more to unpack in order to release that. Then why can't I talk myself out of it? Of feeling displeased by the way she speaks to me, even though she's not talking in a pleasant way at all. I think to myself, and that's how I get my second wind in order to speak to my mom in a kinder tone.
Definitely.
Right? Like I'll think like, why am I so annoyed by this? This is not right.
Yeah.
She didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
There's something within me that's causing it, that she's triggering to do this. So
yeah.
Okay, if she didn't mean any harm, she's not being disrespectful, let me address her in that tone also. So, I'll be like, I'm good, Mom. Like, how are you?
Wow.
But I'll still feel it in my gut.
Yeah.
And it's a weird thing because I'm feeling I'm fighting with myself.
Oh, shoot.
And again, I'm not there yet because I haven't freed myself of whatever's causing that.
Yeah.
But at least I can acknowledge it and act upon it, right?
Yeah.
And in that way, I'm not so reactionary when it comes to situations like that.
Yeah.
But it makes me feel better. It makes you feel free. I think a lot of us, we live in a society that condemns us for being ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Because like we're human beings, right? We're conscious human beings, but there are a lot of things that are very instinctual and very primal, right? And going back to what we were saying before, those things might have served us prior, and they probably don't anymore. But how do you channel it in a way where you're just not neglecting it, right?
Yeah.
I've been learning about this recently, and I'm not an expert on it by any means, but I've been learning about the shadow and the persona.
Yeah.
Have you heard about that?
No, please enlighten me.
Yeah. So, one of like the main heads of psychology from back then, his name is Carl Jung, right? And he talks about there's, parts to a human being's psyche, right? The psychology of like the way people feel and think, their emotions, and what intertwines and what it does to you. And to put it in short, the shadow is the part of you that you repress, that you put away because at one point you learned that it is a negative trait. So you reject it.
Yeah.
Right. And certain emotions or certain things are like anger, right? Like someone who's violent. That's something I strayed away from being because I saw that in my dad, and I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
and you repress that, and then you almost don't know how to tell yourself, like, hey, maybe you're not supposed to be, emotionless all the time, or stoic all the time, or whatever you want to call it. Right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not that bad. Maybe you're just not using it correctly. And so the idea is that you have that side of you where you repress and you almost kind of demonize those characteristics of yourself, right? Which is a part of you. And to learn and accept that is a part of you and that you're capable of that is what's powerful, right? I think what it is a lot of people just condemn it and they say like, I would never do this. I would never be that person, right? And I think changing it to like, it's possible, I'm capable of this, right? Evil things even. But I won't do it. It's a choice.
Yeah.
It's there, but it's a choice. And I think we all have it in some ways that it manifests like weirdly in our dreams, in our intrusive thoughts, and so the idea is that you want to bring that shadow up, right? And I think a lot of people are scared of it because what they might become or accepting who they truthfully are. And it's something that I'll probably talk about more as I become a more of a studious person to the subject. But on the flip side, you also have something they call the persona, right? So persona, I think it means mask in Greek, right? And the persona is the side of you that develops because that's what helps you survive in society, right? It's the customer service voice that you put on when you talk to someone over the phone, even though you don't feel like you want to deal with this bitch, right?
Yeah.
But you do it so that you survive because you will get fired if you don't. Right? So that's the persona. It's the people pleasing side, right? It's like that persona is when you bite your tongue even though you feel like you should say this, but because the circumstance, maybe you don't want to get fired, you don't want to get hurt, you want to hurt someone's feelings, so therefore you keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, huh?
Yeah. Shoot.
But I think that's what it was for me. A lot of it was just like fighting against what I was scared of in myself, I've talked about this a couple times where I've really pushed that side of me away where I could be angry, right? And the thing is that you can't put it away because it is you. It's part of you. Just like how even you mentioned, when you talked about stuff with your brother, like you're not talking like how we are. Right? And you blew up, right? And like that happens to a lot of people where it's almost like people are shocked by the fact that you could be anything but than the way you've been portraying yourself. And that probably has a lot to do with like what we deem as bad. We repress that side of ourselves to where it comes out anywhere else. You ever see those people where they freak out and they throw a tantrum or something just breaks and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from?
It's like repressed. Like they've been held back for so long. And they just need to find ways to express it, even though it could harm like the general public, and
it usually does more when it gets to a point where it explodes. It usually does more harm. I think that's what it is allowing that side to come out and maybe using it in a way that is constructive or productive, right? Being angry and stuff like that, especially as males nowadays, is very, very touchy. Right? I think it's always been touchy, but it's definitely more touchy now because we're talking about a hetero relationship with a female. You don't want to be feared by your significant other, right? As to the fact that you're significantly more dangerous than your female counterpart. And so in certain ways, like we'll repress it, we'll hold it back. But also understanding like when we can use it, there are times where we have to be a little bit more assertive about things and we can have that side to us. Maybe we won't need to push it down as much. But Yeah, man. Like, I think that's something that I've been fighting with a lot
Mhm.
lately.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I'm trying to pull this out of me that was always there out a little bit more.
I appreciate your topic on the shadow and the persona. I guess my question to you is, people perceive you differently, like how we interact with other people
Yeah.
they perceive us differently, like how we're interacting now. We perceive each other in a way where it's like it could be positive, it could be negative, whatever it is, but it's just there's so many perceptions of you, right? So it's just like, who are we? If you look at yourself in the mirror, it's like you have to ask yourself that, like how do I perceive myself? Like, am I repressing just my shadow, or can I face my shadow, and can I face all of my persona so far, like to really think about like, who the hell am I? Like, being angry is okay, right? There's ways to deal with anger, right? It's like, for me, for example, like if I'm angry, I go for a walk, I go to the gym, I ride my bike.
Exactly.
And if I feel like I haven't done enough, I read a book, I tune into a podcast, I create music, I DJ. It's just like creating. And if I don't feel productive enough, fuck, man, like, whatever it is, I try to make time for it.
Yeah.
If I feel like my social battery is in need of, I need to catch up with my close people, I'll reach out to them. I'll make time for them. Like, hey, what are you doing this week? I'll make time for you.
I mean, going back to what you're saying about when you feel angry, that like if you go to the gym, anger is a great feeling to feel when you're lifting weights.
Yes.
Lifting weights, oh my God, a lot of my aggression comes out during that time, and it does help. What I mean? You get charged up and you're like, fuck, this shit is light now. But also in the same way, I want to go back into the idea of like the shadow and how it's beneficial to acknowledge that you have that side of you, is that you judge people a lot less. If I know I'm capable of these things, right, then who am I to say like what you're doing is so wrong? I hear all the time, it's like, oh, that person's a liar. And someone who's saying that typically is someone who is ignoring their shadow. Right? To say that, oh, that person's a liar. Well, are you not a liar? Have you only told the truth?
Yeah. Have you ever lied before?
Have you ever lied before?
White lies, it adds up.
I think by doing that, by acknowledging that, allows you so much more room for compassion, and, it's funny because like, I posted something where I talked about how I don't condemn or demonize people who have cheated as much as I used to when I was a child. And obviously I knew the backlash from the internet would be like, oh, it's probably because he cheats now. And, therefore he's accepting that. I'm like, no, I've never done that. I've been put in a lot of situations where I could. I've never have. But I also have come to this age where I understand, like, yeah, it might be possible. Like, I've never done it. And I hope that I never do. And I don't like putting myself in situations that would cause that. But it's possible. So I'm not that far off. But luckily, fortunately, whatever I've done up until now has allowed me to choose to be faithful rather than cheat.
Definitely.
Right. But also to understand that I'm like, okay, while that sucks and that's like not behavior that you should promote, like there's something in us that, allows people to choose that side, and not to say that it's okay, but it's like, okay, well, if you approach it from a compassionate side, like what can you do to help these people out? If you just demonize them, you condemn them, like there's people who have nothing left are more dangerous than people who have things that they have to fight for. You know what I mean? Like people who don't feel like anyone cares about them, right? Way more dangerous. And that happens when you outcast people. I'm not to say that you should treat them like a friend, because you have to protect yourself too from things that they're capable of, but understanding that, like, hey, a lot of what you're doing and how you feel, sometimes it's due to your upbringing and what you've learned. And that's unfortunate, but maybe things could change, and maybe that could help society for the better. I don't know. I can't really say. I've always felt like I've had to approach it like that. And to me, it's worked out better, and I can't say that I'm only compassionate to my friends. I'm compassionate to people who are in worse positions than I am. And like, I'm like, damn, like I'm grateful that that's not me, but at the same time it doesn't mean I'm gonna disregard you.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you just need something, you know, as little as sometimes weirdly enough like a hug, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it is. Like I'm curious as to why resentment still exists in our spectrum of emotions now, because obviously it's there because it serves us to a certain degree, right? It's probably there to protect you from like, okay, maybe this is bad for me, but how do we interpret it in a way that helps us? You know, I've come to understand, at least to me now, the emotion of resentment. You know, I've felt it definitely for some of my past partners, and I felt it because I felt like this wasn't worth my time, what I was doing, and I was held back in a relationship that I didn't no longer want to be a part of.
Wow.
Right. And I think that was a sign for me to like get out, you know. But
Wow.
there was something that pulled me back in. You know, I don't know if I spoke about too much, but you know, there's definitely in situations where you feel manipulated that you feel resentment too, because it's no longer, and I can't say this confidently that it's no longer your choice. I definitely think everything is still like a choice, quote unquote, right? I think it's just how you perceive that choice, right? Because manipulation is something that is kind of hard to distinguish from when you're in the midst of it a lot of times. But yeah, I mean, for me, I've come to use that feeling of like when I feel resentment, now that I'm able to kind of distinguish what that feeling is, it's almost a sign of me to get out.
Wow.
And that's not just from romantic partnerships, it's from friendships.
Yeah.
It's from some family members of mine, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, I understand part of it is my fault too, because there's a people pleaser in me that wants to stick around.
Wow.
And I put myself in a situation that I should have already been out of.
I resonate with that because I'm going through something similar. I was in a long-term relationship and we just broke up recently. It's just like resentful as in like, dang, like I could have spent all this time like doing something else, but maybe it took this long to become a life lesson. And how do I mold myself to be better as a human being, but also for my future partner? You know, it's just like, was I really intentional with this relationship? Did I go all in? And I could tell you, yes, I did, you know, and, you know, I've exhausted like pretty much all of my options here. And I think I remember like talking to my close friend Maggie about like her previous relationship, like long term. And I was there for her as in like, logically, our relationship as it progresses and it unfortunately dwindles down, it's like we're seeing all these signs, and it's called the sunk cost fallacy, where, you know, we've been together for so long, let's just keep trying, no matter what. And it could either work out for the best and we go through all of these turbulences and we overcome these moments, right? Or it will just continue to be worse and worse. And it's just like, how the fuck do you nip this in the bud? And how do you call it? You know, it's like people pleasing. We're both people pleasers. So it's just like, how do we navigate this realm? You know, it makes you question everything. It's just like, damn, like, am I not enough? Like it makes you think like of all these other circumstantial, and like you're always in your own head too. And it's just like you're hearing this person and you're not seeing eye to eye. It's just like we're always going to be misaligned down the road, and we're always trying to align ourselves, but it's never going to get there.
Yeah, and that's tough to let go of something, right? Especially if there's sentimental value. It's such a abstract value. It's not as simple as like, this person's worth $500, this person's worth 1,000, so therefore I know where their value is and where I should go, right? It's very abstract. And so how do you put a number to that? You kind of can't, right? Or at least to my knowledge right now, you can't. So how do you know when to let go? You know, how do you make that choice? And like right now, like you guys are no longer in a relationship. How do you make that choice? Or how did specifically your own method to do that? Because I think everyone has their own ways of doing it.
That's a great question. How do I let go? I always go back to like all of the trials that I faced. Like, where did I turn to? It's within. So being in solitude, really reconnecting with all of the things that bring me joy, right? It's music. It it's got to be the music, and it's got to be all of the things that I've accumulated, in a sense, not material, but like the knowledge, like and just tuning into other people's realm where they've gone through what I've gone through, and just assessing it as in like, okay, like I've made it this far in my relationship, but unfortunately it's just a chapter. How do I let go of this person and really, accept that down the road, like there'll be one final goodbye, even though she's still like alive and well. I'm already mourning her in a sense where she'll no longer be a part of my life. And I think, to be as transparent with you, I've been mourning my relationship ever since Vietnam trip, and maybe even before that, back in May. So it's been what, May till August, September now. I've been mourning, and I think I've been in monk mode as well. And I think by being in monk mode, I'm able to really understand who I truly am. And I may never know who I truly am, because we're always evolving. We're always changing. A year from now, I'll be a whole different person. And what if I have a new boo and my thought processes change about everything? Maybe that person could be the one for me. So I'm just taking it day by day. Whatever, a higher being has for me, in store for me, I'm ready to just be open to it,
Yeah.
And that's how I navigate, by letting go of things that aren't for me anymore. And I tuned into a podcast recently, and it said something about, there's people in your life that served a purpose, and it's okay to let them go, and they're only there for a season. So it's just like, okay, I get it. As much as we're trying to play long-term games with all these people in our lives, it's long enough. It's been long enough, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I think going back to how it no longer aligns with you and who you are, because we change as people, right? And which is why it's so hard to see long term sometimes, because who knows where you'll be. But I also listened to this podcast. I forgot which one it is, because I listened to so many.
Yeah, I get it.
But they were describing relationships. The analogy was, relationships are like a tree, or you're like the tree, and the relationships is everything that's attached to the tree. So you have people who are seasonal, they come and go. They're like the leaves, right? They die during the fall, winter, and then new leaves come along, right? And they're only there for seasons.
Yeah.
You have the branches, you know what I mean? The only the strongest branches won't be weathered by the weather. It'll stay around a little bit longer, but even then, when it comes to storms, sometimes those branches don't survive.
Yeah.
And then you have the roots, right? The people who've been there the longest, maybe some new roots, some old roots, but they're with you. They were with you through thick and thin. They're just with the shits. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna be around for a long ass time.
Yeah.
And when I thought about more like that, and also thought about what we talked about earlier, the ego, right? The idea that maybe letting go, that we have to know exactly who's gonna be in our life, like knowing for a fact. And is that because we're so scared of being wrong about that decision that we made, because we want to be right? And at that point, it's allowed me for myself to understand, oh shit, I did do this because I was scared of being wrong. And even though I've known, I think that's where the resentment comes from a little bit. It's like, that it's wrong for you, but yet for whatever reason you chose to keep at it. And that's where it builds, because there is an unalignment in how you feel and what you're actually doing. And I think hearing your story now, I think is very similar. I think that's probably it.
Wow.
Going into this, and I kind of want to backtrack a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I want to hear your thoughts about this. And I think I want to talk about it because it's important. But how your dad gave you a hug and you just let everything out, right? There's something I've been talking about a lot more. And so it's funny that we talk about the shadow, because the shadow also encompasses things that are from your childhood that you never got to do or see because you've always wanted it. Right? But then for whatever reason, you pushed it away because it was deemed as something negative. Or the person wasn't capable of showing you that, right? And a lot of that is, people come to terms with it as talking to their inner child, right? Do you feel like your dad somewhat addressed some of your inner child's needs when he gave you that hug?
It did. I don't remember him ever hugging me, and I do remember though, when I was in preschool, he would hug me and he would let me go, and I'd be walking away from him and waving goodbye, and just like that was it. I don't remember any other moments that he hugged me or supported me. So for him to support me during my Vietnam trip, it molded me to be like, okay, how can I be a better son now? I've let go of all of the resentment and just being envious of other people because they had their parents show up and support them. And it makes me reflect, like, down the road, like, if I were to become a dad myself, like, can I show up for my kid properly? So it's like, how can I show up properly now, like, without being a dad? Like a brother, a son, like a coworker, a friend. I gotta show up. And I've been waking up hella early now just to really assess, like, damn, like, I get to be alive again. I get to start my day again. It will end though. There will be a moment where I won't wake up, and I take each day as a blessing. Like, yo, like, I gotta just hone in and really check in with my people, myself, and my community, So I think that's where I stand with my shadow self, even though, like, I'm sure negative feelings will arise, and it's just like, how do I navigate it now? If I were to feel like other negative emotions, like, I'll handle it. I'll figure it out as the best way possible. And if it's not the best way possible, I've learned from it. I'll continue to make mistakes, but hopefully I get to live another day to right my wrongs, if it were to come up.
So I want to ask you this. Now that you've been through the situation with your dad, and you felt like it addressed a need for your inner child, is there anything else that you feel like you've been missing?
In terms of my family?
Just in terms of anything that your inner child wants. Like young Jeffrey.
It's funny. I've been, the past month, I've been really honing in on my, like, daily steps. So I went from an average of 3,000 steps to 10K now. So I've been walking 10K steps daily. And just the other day, I drove by my childhood area that I lived in, like all the apartments in Westminster. And I decided to just park at the park that I usually play basketball at and just go for a walk. I saw the elote lady that I used to buy elote from, and I'm just like, holy shit, like, time flew, but she's still out here hustling, Yeah. And I'm just like, fuck, I didn't have cash on me, so.
Yeah, she should be updated with technology. She should have Zelle, Cash App, Venmo. Imagine, you make so much money. You should help her out, dude. You should make her, like, QR code.
Man, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna check in with her and get her number.
Yeah.
But was walking around and got to see all the kids play ball, and I just put myself in their shoes. I was like, damn, if I were to go back to time and, would I ever change it? Nah, I would keep everything and go through all of those trials that I have been. It molds my character. Yeah. I wouldn't want perfection in my childhood, So I walked past two of my old apartments that my family used to live at. It's all remodeled, There were new things, but there were also some things that were still the same. And I'm just like, damn, like, I was here. These are my roots. And it grounded me because I imagined my little self, my little teen self walking to the park playing basketball, and I felt like that was out, like there was another younger version of me walking right next to me, you know. And I imagined that, and I was just processing it. I'm just like, damn, like this is so crazy. I'm like 29, and that was like my 14-year-old self, you know. It's like, would that younger version of me be proud of me, you know? And I would tell my younger self, like, it's a lifelong journey, and you'd have to be okay with, you know, everything. And it's crazy now that I've mentioned it, walking down that path in my neighborhood, it just sparked up another memory. I faced death for the first time through my uncle. He was a heavy smoker. He was the one that got me started playing basketball, and he would pick me up in his like car filled with cigarette butts and all that, and he would take me to the park, and he would play ball with me. He had a wife and 2 children, and he caught a good one. Like, she was fine as hell. Like, I mean, family aside, like, my uncle was the G. Like, damn, he caught a baddie, you know. Like, so I was like, damn, for him to look like that,
He got game.
he got game. But I remember a few months afterwards, I got a call from my mom. I think I was in middle school, right? So I got a call from her, or it's either that or she woke me up and be like, "Hey, your uncle died." And that was the first time I faced death from a loved one. And I was like, what the hell? Are you serious? Like, how did he die? Because of smoking cigarettes, he had a heart attack. And they didn't save him in time. They were like 10, 15, 20 minutes late, the ambulance. So I was just like, oh shit. Went a few weeks later, like the funeral, saw his wife, broke down sobbing. A year or 2 later passed. She got a new man. She got a boob job. She did a lot of all that. And that changed me. And it made me reflect now. Like, we were just talking about my younger self walking, but for me to kind of go back to this story, like, holy shit, like, we're living in this life now, and people can replace us, you know, whether it's family, your girlfriend, your coworker, your friends. So it's just like, what's the point of all this? You know, it makes you really think. But I really try to be like, okay, how can I leave an imprint when I leave this earth? Like, did I check in with someone that I needed to check in with and really talk and really see eye to eye, versus just small talk, you know? I mean, that's fine too, you know, but who is that person really? And I really, like, I come back to this podcast, and I really appreciate us going back and forth and, like, really figuring ourselves out along the way, and, like, bringing up things that we haven't really shed a moment or have a thought of, you know?
Yeah.
So I really appreciate this moment. And yeah, it made me, you know, who I am today is because of all the choices that I've made, all the lessons, whether it's positive or negative. I am who I am, and I think I'll always look forward to going through this roller coaster of a life, you know. Currently, my entire family is alive and well. My dad has a back problem. He worked in the same company that I'm still working for, in manufacturing, in the production line, you know. We were talking outside of the podcast earlier, like automation, and how, like, AI and automation will replace all the production line assembly workers. And for my company to just not really treat him right, in a sense of, like, disability and all that, his back injury, it says a lot about the company itself. And it makes me like, okay, like, I thought I had it all, in a sense where I was structured, I got an education, I got a career path in supply chain, and I'm working for a purpose-driven company where it's a medical device for the heart. I was born with a heart defect. I had a hole in my heart. I was supposed to be dead at 1, but the surgeon was able to, patch it up. It's called ventricular septal defect. It's common now. So, back in my childhood self, like, I would be always insecure of my body. Like, I wouldn't want to show anyone my heart surgery, like, scars. And I wasn't confident, and it made me, like, be less of the person I am today. But I fully embraced who I am, past high school and college life, and it just made me like, damn, like, I can keep going as long as my heart is still pumping. I'm ready to just really cherish and really excel in everything that I do.
You know how you mentioned that your uncle showed you play basketball,
Yeah.
and your dad wasn't around, and obviously his passing was something that was very impactful to you,
Yeah.
right? Do you feel like there was a specific reason why it was so impactful? Do you think it had anything to do with the fact that he was around, you got quality time with someone, maybe a male figure, that you weren't able to receive that kind of attention from your own dad at the time?
Yeah, he was busy working, so I guess what he did was connect me to people that are able to take care and of me, like mom, my uncle, my grandparents, and for him to give me an escape to, like, outside of the going to school, do your homework, I have the opportunity to just go out and be active, and I've been active ever since. And what I appreciate with my dad, though, when I was 14, he put me in the gym. That was the moment that he was diagnosed with diabetes, and he changed his whole entire life around. It's like, fuck this, I'm gonna take my kid to the gym. You're gonna go ham. And he's been he changed my trajectory, regardless of what my uncle did for me in basketball in middle school. What my dad did for me when I was in high school, priceless. I'll never forget that, because it made me become so disciplined. And as I progress in my life, like, it also made me intentional. Disciplined and being intentional, it says a lot, because you walk around in this world nowadays, you see all these people, like, lustful for food, gluttony, and just, like, you look at their bodies and it's just like, you're killing yourselves. And I don't know what you're going through, but I hope that you're able to become aware,
Yeah, that's
such a heavy topic.
It's a crazy topic, dude. It's the elephant in the room sometimes,
Yeah.
And as unfortunate as that is, I think we've just not learned how to navigate around those conversations. Man, I'm glad your dad did that for you, and
Yeah.
it obviously shows. And unfortunately enough, like, going back into that same topic of parenthood, like, some parents, not to speak bad about them. Again, it goes back to, I do believe that they're doing the best that they possibly can.
Of course. Yeah.
But some, usually kids who are really big,
Yeah.
like, early on, their parents are typically, just look at their parents.
Yeah.
Right. And if they can't get themselves out of it, how can they teach a child to do that? Right. And then you grow up with a couple of habits that are ingrained in you because your parents taught you, like, it's okay to eat this or that. Again, I'm not like, look at me, I'm not the most fit motherfucker at all. I abuse my body to certain degrees, but fortunately there was, like, someone who's instilled in me, like, okay, maybe take care of yourself if you're gonna abuse yourself so much.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's crazy how much that has to do with our upbringing and how we form as adults, because we're now just learning how, when kids are young, we're definitely like sponges, right? But also we don't understand nuance, and we don't understand, like, how many other variables apply to the things that we're learning, and sometimes how to unlearn certain things. You know what I mean? For me, like there's so many things in me that probably went to my shadow side due to how my parents talked to me, and most likely they didn't mean it in a malicious way.
Yeah.
And I just was never able to understand it because I was a child. You know what I mean? I remember being called idiot when I was like, I don't know, 6-7 years old, getting yelled at, and that I felt like caused me to stray away from a lot of things.
Wow.
Because I felt like, oh, if I do this, I'm gonna get yelled at, or I'm wrong to do this or that. You know, I didn't pick up on a lot of things that other kids did because I always felt shame, like when I was younger. And, you know, I'm glad that I'm not sure how much of that you went through in your life. I think a lot of people deal with it in their own ways.
Yeah.
But I think going back to what you were saying, it's like, how do you know which thoughts are like yours? You know, all these different personalities, all these people around you.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to feeling if there's any kind of shame instilled in you from, you know, listening to other people. I think that's where it comes from most of the time. Shame is typically something I believe comes from the outside. You know, you bring shame to your family, you know, and like these things are like people have instilled in you, but is that really you? And sometimes you got to listen to that and be like, why do I feel like this? Is it because truthfully I feel like this is so wrong? Or if this is because someone told me that's wrong and I shouldn't be doing this? And I think digging into that is probably going to be where a lot of the answers lie. But yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to discern between what is truthfully your own voice and someone else's. But I did hear there is a practice, and very similar to what you do is like being in solitude, and that's irregardless if you're extroverted or introverted. Doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum. Is just being in solitude and allowing thoughts to flow through you, right? And typically, I think a lot of people, I'm sure positively everyone functions differently to a certain degree, but you'll hear about things that come out from external voices, right? Meaning, oh shit, I gotta work today, or my boss asked me this, or I gotta study, or whatever. So these are all external like factors. These are things that like are there because there are other things influencing you, right? And you go through that level or that phase of solitude. It's like, okay, the first things that fly to your head, and you think about the things that have been repressed, right? You'll go through these thoughts where it's like, why am I thinking about this person, or why am I thinking about this time back when I was a kid? Right? Things that you didn't address, maybe you didn't process it, maybe you pushed it far back, you know? And you go through that, and then you go through the next level where it's like, okay, wow, I'm actually out of thoughts, I'm kind of bored. Like you sit in complete stillness, right? And then something will come to you, and that is most likely your voice. And you know, I'm not good at practicing this yet. I meditate, and I think I haven't found myself in the last phase of that, but I do want to practice that. And to me, it does make a lot of sense to kind of process all your thoughts and all your emotions before you get to what's literally just you. What's left is just you. But yeah, I think a lot of us are struggling with that because the day and age that we live in is just so loaded with information, good and bad, that we can't find time to just sit with ourselves. And it's funny because I talked about this a while ago, not really understanding if there was anything science backed behind what I was saying. And, you know, I'll just speak anecdotally, but like very similar how your body doesn't want to digest all the time. Like if you feed it food, it's gonna constantly be digesting, right? And you don't want to constantly be digesting. You need time for it to just digest, and finish through and go through the reparation, or like the system that restores all its functions, right?
Quick question: did you fast today?
I haven't eaten yet. I
haven't eaten yet either. 24-hour fast, baby.
Oh, nice, dude.
Yeah,
congrats,
I've been doing that. Like,
we were big on fasting, by the way. And I'm not saying it's because of health reasons, but it helps us in many ways. But I think, you know, sitting in solitude is kind of like fasting for the mind, and that's how I don't want to say it.
Oh man, yeah, it's okay to do nothing. You know, like leave everything aside and just be here.
funny enough, it's probably the hardest time to do it ever, because now there's so many ways to escape from your boredom. You know, what's one of the first things that we do once we feel that boredom creep up? We reach for our phones. You know, I think the more accessible these things become, the harder it is for us to really understand who we are. And unfortunately, you know, it's built to be like that. And I think that's why now I'm, again, more understanding of like the youth, because I'm like, damn, you grew up in this day and age. You know, iPad kids are a thing.
They're locked in.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's going to make it a lot tougher. And, you know, I hope that we could get to some people through this conversation, or at least some people who know better, that they could push us down to the youth, you know. But man, I don't know.
Man, that's a rabbit hole, because you mentioned iPad kids. So like, I remember back when Soup Plantation was open, I would go there, and then I would see families.
Soup Plantation.
Shout out Soup Plantation. Oh, the broccoli salad and the soup clam chowder. Okay, I would go there. I'll see all these old people. They'd be present. They don't have their phones or shit. But then I would see like the millennial families and their kids with the iPads. And I'm just like, oh shit, here we go. You know?
Yeah.
So it's just like if I were to become a parent, it's just like, how the fuck do I navigate this realm of devices? You know, like, do I just give my my kid like just a book and like a flip phone? Like, is that an asshole move, or is it normal now to give them an iPad? Like, I'm just trying to figure it out, you know. But
I think it's all about putting down limitations as to anything, right? I don't think that they can't have it at all. I think it has to be completely limited. Like, you have to know at this age what it's going to do to your child, right? And I think we've always had something to distract us.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was probably just like a letter, you know, and then came books, then came fucking game, like radio, right? And then Game Boys and whatever's. Now it's just the most accessible that's ever been, and also like the hardest to get away, right? For one, it's like built into the platforms. Two, like, phones fucking won't die after a day of not charging them now. Shit like that. Even back then, you fucking play a Game Boy, that shit's dead after a couple hours, you know. Like, what do you do? Like, as a kid, you're like, well, fuck, that's just how it works. Now it's like, we know, oh shit, just get the new phone, it'll last longer, you know. And like, lower the battery. Like, we do so many things because it's almost like it feels like essential to us, but it's really not. It's no longer that essential. But yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I'm not a parent. We're not parents. That's hard to say. Maybe I'll get a parent on here to ask them if they're good at it. But I want to take it back a couple notches. And talk about how I view value now as to where I am in life, and how I determine what's like important to me and what's not. You know, and I want to use like a general rule of thumb, and you let me know what you think about it. And obviously you can't apply it to everything, but I think you apply it to most things. And I think value, as far as like what's important to you, is typically determined by how much you want that thing versus how limited that thing is. So, you know, I think everything, pretty much most things are temporary in life, right? And as long as we realize that, we could attribute more value to it. So, you know, I guess example in relationships, right? Let's say you've been in a relationship, a marriage that's been loveless, and you're miserable for a very, very long time, but you're still together, and one of you guys die, right? So till death do you part. And that ends. You know, I don't know if the person, their deathbed, would deem that as like valuable or important. Nor does it mean that it's not impactful, right? Because I think whenever that happens, you did choose to spend your life with someone. And I think in order to make a better choice would be to understand like where that value lies now. And you know, I think that's why when you talk about relationships, people tend to put a lot of weight towards how much time you've been together. Right? Because time holds value, because we have limited time. Right. But I think also how much time you spend with someone that you want to be with, that you want to keep in your life, is what tells you the true value. Right. Because I personally, again, this is just my opinion. I would rather be in a very short relationship that was very full of joy or happiness than a long one that has overstayed its welcome. Right. Because everything's temporary. Eventually. And the reason why I bring this up is for myself to understand better and reduce the amount of resentment that I feel in future relationships. Hopefully I'm able to identify it earlier on and leave before I feel like that.
Yeah.
And also for the relationships that happen to be more temporary, because they're all temporary, that I'm able to value it more. You know, I think that death is a very good reminder of that. You know, when we understand people's time is limited.
Yes.
And realistically, like you were saying, we could wake up tomorrow and not be breathing, right?
Yeah.
And if we think that and we understand that all these things are limited, that we would make the most of our time. Now, our time isn't just you and me, but like people involved in your life. I think that's so important because it's so easy to not be present and take other people's time, you know, for granted.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about technology and how that takes us away from being present. And I think I have a problem now, which I'm facing more often, maybe because I'm just more aware of it now, is that when I'm with other people, I think a lot of people feel like this, I'm assuming, is that your time feels taken for granted when they're not present, when they're on their phone.
Oh yeah.
And you know, it's a lot more forgivable if it's for something that is deemed necessary, like for instance, working, right? Oh, if you're on a work phone call, it's okay. But deemed almost, no, most cases negatively if you're just escaping, right? You're just on social media aimlessly scrolling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know how to talk about this with the people in my life that do that right now. It's like a weird topic because it seems so harmless, but are you overreacting when you do that? You're just asking them to be present with your time. Is that in any way disrespectful? Like, I wish people will understand that. I mean, I brought it up, obviously, right? Like we all make fun of it now. It's like, oh damn, I came to hang out, and everyone's like on their phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's a lot more problematic than what we let it off to be.
I get you. I see it too. And it's like, how do we navigate this the craziness of technology now? It's like in the palm of our hands.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, like, do we have to just set it to like do not disturb mode? You know?
I don't know. It's strange because you feel like this more with the people that you care about, the people that you know, quote unquote, value more, right? Like I could almost see why a stranger will do that. Someone that I don't know that well.
Of course.
Like we might be mid conversation with a stranger I just met at a bar and they're checking their phone. I'm like, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
You don't understand the value of me, right? Which is okay because you don't know me.
Yes, of course.
But someone who you lend to your life, right? Someone that you hold to a certain degree,
Yeah.
like responsible for how you feel because you allow them into your life, like that vulnerability, like, hey, I'm giving you a piece of myself and you don't reciprocate because right now you're on your phone.
Yeah.
Like that is something that
Yeah.
I feel like it's harder now to navigate than ever, you know. And
Yeah.
it's almost like where do you draw that boundary where how much is okay and how much is not?
Yeah. It's like if it gives you the annoyance and it continues to happen, that's when you know to like, okay, I think it's time to kind of like take a step back and just really let them be, because maybe that's their form of escapism, or maybe that's their way of functioning in society. You know, maybe that's our expectations of them to, oh, like, since you're my friend, like, maybe not be on your phone, but what if they're on their phone? But if they're just escaping on their phone, then that's just a telltale sign that they might not be a good friend to you long term if they're just so enwrapped in their technology. You know,
I think also triggers some like insecurity too. Like, oh damn, am I that boring? You know, am I that boring that you gotta escape? And I'm not saying this because I'm perfect, because I do the same, you know.
Yeah.
This is where I'm trying to catch myself, and that's how I know how addictive these things could be. You know, it's because I participate in this culture.
Yeah, no, I can give you an example of this. It happened in early, like at post high school, and I was attracted to this girl, and I asked her to go on a date with me. The moment I invited her to the date, yeah, she came, but she was on her phone this whole time.
Ooh.
Back then I was chubby chasing, so I was dating
You like the thick girls.
I like
triple
thick girls. I love all women at this point, but she was on her phone, and I was miserable, but I still paid for dinner. You know, but that was the last time I interacted with her. I actually saw her at the club recently at Heat.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say shit. I was like, oh. I was with Maggie,
Oh, damn.
and we were on shrooms.
Shit.
And I was just like, oh shit, she's right there, but she has a life.
That's funny. Wow.
Like all the people that were in our life for a time being temporarily, like I truly believe that people are temporary, and it's just like we just had to find meaning in that temporary physical being a part of it, you know.
Yeah.
And we just have to learn to accept that, you know. But yeah, what was I saying? Saw her at the club, but I also let's just kind of backtrack. Back in middle school, I was shunned. I was shamed for I was just let go of this. I was part of a big Asian group, and by being shamed and shunned from the group, it allowed me to grow and expand to all types of friendships, not just Asian. So I remember like being in middle school, and I was like, since y'all kicked me out of the group, I thought I was being good to y'all, but you know, there was a leader of the pack, obviously, and she called the shots.
Oh, wow.
And she kicked me out, and I don't know for what reason, but yeah, that changed my whole my life trajectory, and I really appreciate for it, even though it was a negative thing. I turned it into something positive in a sense where I was able to just diversify my group. I wasn't so secluded in like tunnel vision. Oh, I gotta make Asian friends. No, I can make fucking white, Mexican, you know, black friends. You know, I don't care. I'm all for the people now. She changed my life, and it's funny because I saw her at apartment 40, you know, in LA, 405 or whatever. This was like maybe pre-COVID when we were out in the clubs, and I got a chance. I saw her, my bully, the one that shunned me from the middle school.
Damn.
And I was like, should I go up to her and say something?
Oh shit.
My friends at the time, they were like from academy and like Lena and all that. They're like, should we? You should.
Wow.
So I'm just like, you know what, fuck it, we ball. Like, I'm gonna go up to her. And I told her, I'm like, hey, it's nice seeing you here, but you fucked my shit up. But hey, I really appreciate you for fucking my shit up. You know, I wouldn't be the person I am today without it, you know. And I hope you're doing well, and fuck, you know, I don't know what else I was saying. I was kind of wired. I'm just kind of like anxious just to approach her, but yeah.
That's
but
huge.
I've never seen her again after that.
Man, I mean, obviously we all hope our bullies from when we were younger, you know, have become better person.
I hope
But
so
like
too.
you just never know. Like
You know,
I feel like I can't hold on to that kind of negative energy as I used to when I was younger. You know, I think now it's really hard for me to think of someone that I absolutely hate. You know, if anything, sometimes if I really feel strongly about it, it's more so I feel like empathetic. You know, like, damn, I knew what that was like when I was younger, you know, probably through you. But now it's like you go through it when you're older, and I hope you get out of it, you know, because it's an unfortunate circumstance that you became that bully. You know, it's almost no one really, I don't think, again, this is just my shower thoughts, right? I don't think people choose to become bullies. You know, people are bullies because of their circumstances. Usually you can always pull that back to what happens at home. You know, whether they had parents who bullied them, siblings, you know, family members, bully from school, teachers sometimes. Like, it's almost like their villain arc as a child. You know, for whatever reason that she doesn't look as healthy, like, people have their own demons, you know, and I think that's the way I think about it now. It's like, again, you know, I'm not to say that I'm better than anyone at all.
Of course
you know,
not.
this is just, if anything, I'm just luckier. right? To
Yeah.
have those circumstances provide to me where, yeah, I'll take care of my health. And again, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I definitely abuse my body at times,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think to live with that kind of energy sometimes is, I think it's like poisonous to us to a certain degree. And now I feel so much more like compassion in my life when I've learned about why people might be the way they are.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and in both ends too. Like when I see people who are successful and have done a lot of things, I feel compassion,
Yeah.
but for myself. I'm like, okay, maybe there's certain things that I didn't get when I was younger, that allowed me to become like what I would deem as successful, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think when I think about the opposite end, people who are like less fortunate, and I'm like, damn, like I give you compassion, like whatever reason
Yeah.
your life turned out like this. And this is not to say that I'm like better. I just feel fortunate, right? Like I hope that you get to where you want, assuming that's not what you want,
Yeah.
And it's tough because really the only person that you can really control is like yourself, right?
Yes.
Like you could try to help everyone as much as you can, but in the very end it's their choice, right? Or hopefully they meet a pair of circumstances that allow them to get out of it. But beyond that, like I want to talk to you about you're out of this relationship now. It's a long relationship,
Yeah.
and you said that you guys are amicable, like you guys can move on, right? So in what's your perception of relationships now, getting out of it? Because typically I feel like people go two ways, right? They're either happy, relieved, can move on, or they become jaded, and it becomes more difficult, and it's a darker world out there than you remembered.
I love that. I love the two sides. I'm a serial monogamist, as in I'll date you and hone in on this relationship in hopes of it for it to blossom, right? But now that, because I've been through the trenches, right, it's like ongoing back and forth, these battles that we choose and the risk we take, right? We hope to end in marriage or divorce or like death, whatever those outcomes are, whatever your goal is, what you envision with your partner, there's variations to this where if you were child free, but you want to get married, fuck it, we ball, let's do that and be breadwinners, be dinks. Another one is, we get married and let's start a family and let's pour our heart and soul and energy into nurturing the next generation, right? Or the third is, you're just going to be my long-term partner, I'm committed to you, let's not put a marriage contract on it, fuck that shit. I don't want to bring the government in,
Yeah.
So it's just like, we'd rather die regardless of a contract. Like, can you ball with me, can you trust me not to cheat or whatever the fuck, I'll do it, and then the fourth thing is becoming so jaded that people just clock out. As men, like we need all the like support, through the opposite genders. Just like we need that nurturing feminine energy, that support, that respect, that love, whatever it is that we value. And if we don't get that from our partner, and then we go through this turbulence of a long-term relationship for it to just end, it's just like, yes, we become jaded. But it's like, how do you navigate now that you're jaded? Like I was looking up statistics of the male suicide rate. It's crazy, brother. Somewhere along the lines of like being under like their 50s, and it's a high rate of suicide because they face loneliness, and there's a whole epidemic, so it's like, how do we navigate that realm when we just got out of a relationship? But for me, on my end, sure, I can experience all these things, but sure, I can be jaded, but that's temporary. I have full head on my shoulders, all work obligations, family, friends, support system that I'm thriving with. It's like, it's okay to let go of this long-term relationship in order to be open and hopeful for the next opportunity and the new abundance of friends that will come into my life, regardless if they're temporary or we're going to go through the trenches of either getting married and all those other options that I've stated, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm open to it, you know? And I think both of us are like have similar mindsets. So I just kind of want to check in with you on your current mindset as a whole, and how are you navigating this realm, and like, did it change, or are you still stuck in like, okay, like I'm still the way I am, you know?
I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah.
So one thing, anyone who listens to the podcast knows that like I'm not really for marriage. I'm not against it. Like, you want to get married, you could get married. Just it's just not my thing personally. But I have noticed that my stance has kind of changed on this one thing, which is I don't know now, which before I was very confident, if me being single for this long is a good thing or a bad thing. Right. So I'm about to be approaching 3 years now. And to a lot of people that I speak about, or to a lot of people that I talk to, they're always like, damn, you've been single for a while. Like, don't you think you should get into a relationship? Are you not allowing yourself happiness? You know, are you choosing this because you're cynical? And I'm like, wow. Like, it's making me question myself, because am I right now just, am I coping with what's going on? You know, or am I truthfully happy like by myself?
Yeah. Wow.
It's a strange thing to contemplate,
Yeah.
because I was so certain that I'm like, I'm 100% happy by myself. I don't feel lonely. But I hear so many people speak about it. I'm like, damn, is that the only path to life, is to be in a relationship? And I'm not obviously completely changed my mind about it. I think, you know, to a certain degree, what I feel about being alone is valid.
Yes.
You know? But the ideal also is, some people brought it to my attention, like, maybe it's not about being lonely. You know, maybe it's about improving your life. Maybe having a partner could be better for you. You could be a better version of yourself with a partner. And maybe they're right. I don't know. I think that's one thing that I've come to conclude as of lately, is that I've now steer on the side of uncertainty more than certainty. And it's because I allow myself to explore that side where it's like, am I confident about this? Am I for sure? Well, let me try to put myself in that headspace, in that position, to really think about this, you know? Because before I would just be like, oh, this is how I am, for sure. That's how I am, without testing it. I think it's just difficult to test if you're happy being single. Because sometimes you could cope by doing other things. You could escape. You know, you could hang out with your friends more. You could do things that are purposeful to your life. You could date and never really be in a relationship, you know, just to feed like that thirst, that hunger for someone else's company. I'm not quite sure. I think this is a journey that I'm still on. And, you know, I tell people that I'm not closed-minded to it, but I just, right now, currently where I'm at, I don't feel the urge to do it. Although I want to be open-minded and you know, allow it into my life. I just don't think it's appropriate right now. And just to put things into perspective, you know, I'm just dealing with like a lot of family stuff, and it's kind of a mess, to be honest. And I can't imagine pulling someone into that.
Because you feel like a burden.
And I'm also I'm not the guy to you know, serial monogamous too. It's really hard for me to participate in something like hookup culture, you know. Not to say that I haven't, but like, I just that's not what I gravitate towards, like, naturally.
I'm sure we've experimented with all that, the hookup culture. So it's just like we see what it's like, but it's just like,
it's like what we were talking about. It's like, okay, you tried it, now you kind of know. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't necessarily like I've been in relationships and I've been single. It's not like I've never experienced it. So that's why I could say that I've at least like dabbled And I've been in a lot of long-term relationships, and I think just where I'm at right now, I just feel like a different purpose. And once I find a person that I can see being intertwined with the life that I have now, or the life that develops, whenever that is, then it'll happen.
Yeah, no.
I just don't care to force it. I'm not one of those people where it's like, oh, find me another person to be with. You know what I mean? Like I'm totally chilling right now.
It's like we're not desperate because we're so grounded in ourselves.
Yeah, I think there's also like a thing that comes from that. I think there's a thing that comes from like longing for it so much that could cloud your judgment.
Yeah.
For like a better word, like I'm not saying that some people, run out of options, so therefore they, pick what's left.
Yeah.
I'm just saying for myself specifically, I just don't feel like that. Yeah, I feel like when it's time, it'll happen. I'm just gonna continue doing what I'm doing now, and if my thoughts on it change, then so be it. I'm open to change too. It's just right now it just hasn't. So in 3 years, again, this might be me coping. Like I don't think it's that long.
Yeah.
I have friends who've been single for like 15 years. I'm like, God damn, that's a long time. And maybe
that's wild.
Yeah, in comparison, I'm like, oh shit, it's not that bad. But my stance is pretty much been the same. I think as long as I could really identify what makes me really, really happy, or what makes me joyful, then I'll be okay. I think that's what it is. I don't think you should put all your eggs into one basket. Coming from a single monogamous, I don't mean it. And like, you have to, be with other people. But I mean, like, you're a multifaceted human being. There's so many other aspects to you. You could allow other things to make you happy or bring you joy.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the foundation of a human being outside of relationships is all these other things. In the relationship nowadays, because we live in a different kind of society, it's just the cherry on top. Like we've come to understand that that's also a something that not everyone gets. You know what I mean? And I've come to accept that. I've had a few, and they were good for the time being. Yeah, and I was happy, and I hope that if people could explore that, they should, for especially the ones that haven't. But for me, myself, speaking only for myself, like I'm okay right now.
I'm so happy that you're okay with it, and you're also open-minded about potential people that are willing to come into your life and showing you that, hey, maybe a being together with that person would be beneficial to you. And it's crazy. Like we're living in the times where we're becoming more aware of the previous generation, as in like in this day and age, like we see our friends getting married and all that, but then down the road it's just like they get divorced, and it's just like we said, like things are temporary, and maybe they got into the marriage thinking that it will be the end all be all, but unfortunately it didn't work out.
I think with life, one guarantee is uncertainty. I think that's okay. I think if people approached it like that more, then they'd be more free. Like I think feeling chained because you had to be absolutely certain on anything and not being able to change your mind is something that is of the past. I think we're malleable, society is changing, and we could choose and pick like what's in our life, no matter at what point. So yeah, man, I hope that helps someone out there who feels stuck. Because the last thing you want to do is resent the people that are in your life. Your loved ones, your relationship. I think one thing that I want to say is specifically about human beings is that it's very easy for us to switch out an emotion for something that we previously had felt. And an example of that is, for instance, you could be in a relationship for 10 years and be very happy. Right. And if someone commits maybe some infidelity, then you could easily be like, fuck that person, and basically erase all the happy feelings from prior. Right. So why not learn how to address that prior, and understand like it doesn't have to sour everything. You don't have to stay in a relationship longer than it needs to where you resent and you dislike the person that at one point was your whole world.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with us letting go of our ego and being able to say like, yes, this no longer aligns with me and who I am.
Yeah, I know that we've been mentioning like cheating, so I kind of want to kind of check in with you on that topic. I think
Yeah.
people that are in long-term relationships and they think that it's not for them, and it's okay for, in a sense, like that person to be like assess their whole entire relationship dynamic. And I could see why people cheat, you know. It's because you know, they lack there's so many variations to it. What if it's like a sexless marriage? Like, how the hell do you release that seed of yours, the essence, you know? And
I mean, that's that primal side of us.
it's like our primal, you know, innate, you know, survival. So it's just like, if I'm married to somebody that they're not really, you know, making sure my needs are met, it's like, fuck it. Like, I don't want to be miserable. I only have one life. So I get where the cheaters are coming from.
Yeah,
and
this is talking about the shadow side, right? Like, you can acknowledge the capability, you know, of you as like a human being.
Yeah,
you're not saying that you're encouraging it.
Yeah,
you understand.
Yeah,
and I think that's going back to everything. You know, like if we could acknowledge what we're capable of, human beings, and acknowledging like the shadow side, maybe we would have a more compassionate society. But instead, we have, you know, you have people, you call them virtue signalers, right? Where it's like, oh shit, you do this, and you act like, oh damn, you've never been in this situation before, you've never been close, like you're so innocent. And it's like, damn, like maybe we're just a bunch of people who just are trying to live life and understand ourselves better, and sometimes we make mistakes. And if we could just look at it like that, damn, I think we could actually talk to each other and have conversations versus just condemn each other and like, you know, cancel the person.
I heard stories of when couples cheat and they're still together. It's just like because they're working on themselves and each other and trying to understand the other side, versus getting cheated on and like, just fuck it, let go, start a new path, you know.
That's wild, dude. I still don't fully understand, and that's something that, you know, I'm trying to wrap my head around too, but again, anything could happen. So, all right, so I have a couple questions for you. These are just questions that you can answer good or bad, just truthful to yourself. So, you know, the first one is, what makes Jeff uniquely Jeff? Like, what makes you as a person?
I think in this current state that I'm in, I'm intentional with my time and my surroundings and my people. Like in terms of creativity, like I've been going through a rabbit hole of just music and reconnecting with it. So I'm hoping to finish up my project soon and releasing it to the world. So I'm getting back into the swing of things. All of my hobbies that I've put away for just trying to develop and maintain a relationship, it's all down the drain now, but it's a life lesson. So I'm like, okay, what have I put off? So I'm just very intentional with everything, be it friendships, potential other friendships, you know, just making time for those people.
The next question is, what was a monumental time in your life, something that's changed the trajectory of your life? I know you spoke about a couple, but let's go into one that forever has changed you, and not one that we've talked about a little bit earlier.
I think as I go through these breakups, it's just like I'm always longing to find myself again. And I think because of this recent one, I'll be forever grateful to share the time that I have with her. But at the same time, it's a life lesson and permanent lesson for me to really uphold who I truly am and what I'm capable of. And the world is my oyster, and I just want to really lock in, you know, set whatever I set my mind to, I'm going to do it no matter what.
And my last question is, how do you want to be remembered?
I want people to remember me as the person that would always vouch for them and really try to tap into their potential. As in, like, if they are doubting themselves about a certain project, or just in general, it's just like, how can I reframe your mind in order for you to see your potential, right? We all have that capability of creating, and I think we're so repressed by society and expectations that we don't create. And not a lot of people are choosing the creativity path. And we need to really hone in on it, because that's our soul talking to us. That's the universe telling us to really pursue it and create, and passing down that from generation to generation. It's like, you know, it's a, I think people are awakened by, damn, like the structures of society is kind of falling apart, but how can I nurture it to the point where I feel understood, represented, and just like, is it through like my art?
All right, Jeff, man, thank you for joining me on today's episode. Thank you for our friendship and just sharing with me all the things that you've been going through, dude, because I feel like this bond, this companionship is beautiful, and I think the world needs more of this, you know? So thank you for everything.
And I appreciate you, and I always look forward to all of our interactions. You know, you play a pivotal role in my life. You know, you supported me from day one, and you welcomed me in with open arms, and you allowed me to, you know, pave the road for myself and really give back and bridge the gap for my creativity.
Of course, dude, 100%, man.
Yeah.
Can you let the audience know where they can find you?
Yeah, you could find me on my Instagram, Jeffrey _Dang. There's another Jeffrey Dang, but you know, he's a TikTok and he's a Gen Z, but I fuck with him, you know. Shout out to him too. We have the same birthdays.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Which is insane. I saw his ID. I was like, bro, what the heck? But anyways, you can find me on SoundCloud as well, Jeffrey _Dang, and I'm spelled REY, not ERY. So
thank you to you guys, the audience, for watching all the way through. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment below what you guys want us to talk about next time. And remember, live fast, eat ass.